Password.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to go live on the Facebook. It just took a minute for me to do that. Yeah. So today's subject, this is the 424th weekly meetings we are doing now. And today's subject is army and religion. For this, we have invited one of the most honored and coveted person in the country today, Major General Yash More. He has readily accepted to speak on our forum, and I also thank Professor Chennabaswaya for introducing General Yash More to this forum. And Telangana Janavedika, as usual, has taken up a very, very complex and the most happening subject, that is the religion. And I think we are bold enough to go live today on this subject. And since an army general with his 35 years of career is speaking here, I request all the participants to kindly bear with him. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand. In between also, I will allow you to ask a question. Otherwise, as usual, after the talk is over, there will be a quick Q&A session for half an hour. I'll allow you then. And may I request James Prashant to introduce Major General Yash More to the forum and also the subject concerned today. Thank you so much. James, please continue.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, and I wish everyone a very happy new year 2022. I welcome everyone this evening for the 424th session of Telangana Janavedika's forum this Sunday. Our topic today is Armed Forces, Religion. The story of society, the narration of history and of civilization can never be told without the inclusion of warfare and violence. While most part of recorded history is of the story of kings and emperors, but in the modern era and in the past couple of hundreds of years, the story of common soldier is at the forefront. The soldier puts his own life in danger by leaping first down into the trench, where he is sure to be cut to pieces. It is one thing to enter bravely into the breach from a thirst for glory and public spirit. And it is another thing to reflect on the miseries of war and view the desolations of whole countries and consider the intolerable hardships which the soldier himself, who is the instrument here, is forced to undergo. War has always generated passions which are contradictory and vacillating. While there is horror at its capacity for destruction, but there is admiration for courage in the face of death. We are mesmerized by the spectacle of battle and want to discover what it was like, a curiosity that is now satisfied by television filled with grisly details of the bodies of the dead, both civilian and military. War has always provided ordinary people with an opportunity to engage in history on a grand scale. There are individual stories in the hurly-burly of war. For some, it was opportunity to escape from a boring, uncongenial, or a threatening world for adventure, especially in the earlier periods where a soldier could enrich himself by looting. We can read accounts of soldiers of the British East India Company buying estates back in England. But then militaries across the world, but since then, militaries across the world have undergone huge transformations, adapting to strict rules of engagement and adhering to the Geneva Convention in the modern era. A new culture of engagement has been developed. Now, coming back to society's admiration of courage, militaries have a carefully cultivated patterns of life. Concepts of personal courage, chivalry, honor, and self-respect based on an indifference to danger, with blending ideals of social responsibility and notions of virtue. This is a pattern of culture which is followed religiously by militaries worldwide. The outlook of military leaders and their values make people look up to them and look up to their way of life. And death in battle has remained one of the most celebrated expression of patriotism. It would be very interesting to understand these patterns of life from a social science perspective. The transformation of militaries particularly happened in the 20th century, which required the mobilization of entire populations due to internal wars and wars of empire. These have had tremendous historical importance and are pivotal points in history, especially in the evolution of independent nation states and the global order, and which has continuously been shaped by warfare. And this was dictated by nationalism, since all the population had to be involved, and therefore the common man became part of nation making and building. This gave nations a pattern of life, their future direction under a constitution, wherein the nation's political structures and principles are upheld and defined by it. Also, the total wars of World War I and World War II, waged by industrial nations, demanded universal participation. And again, the ideology of nationalism was in the forefront, wherein loyalty is tied to the land. Here, people's performance in war is so closely linked to national self-esteem. In every society, in previous times, it was the warrior class that took paramountcy over territory, social and political power, and economic power. In a sense, they looked after the demands of geography and ideology, which was defined by loyalty to the king and by divine goodwill. But the emergence of democratic societies and patterns of life based on the constitution has curtailed it. But the fact remains that since the earliest societies and to the present democratic republics, armed forces have remained an important institution for security. Scholars tell us that the deadliest wars in human history were fought over the ideologies of nationalism, socialism, capitalism. Scholars also tell us that these ideologies can also be defined as religions because of the certain patterns of life in these concepts. Definitely, they have had their impact too on the armed forces. It would be interesting to know how, alongside these ideologies or religions, the interactions of traditional religions have been in the armed forces. This is a subject we rarely hear, and it is very complex. And to speak to us on this, we are most honored and privileged to have with us Major General Dr. Yash Mor. Major General Yash Mor is a third-generation army officer, born and brought up in village Bas in Hisar district of rural Haryana. He has done his schooling from Rashtriya Military School, Bangalore. In school, he was an active member of the debating, dramatics, and sports teams. He passed out from the prestigious Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, in June 1985 and was commissioned in one of the oldest infantry battalions of the Indian Army. The officer excelled at all sports, including boxing, basketball, and played handball up to national level. He represented the country in the United Nations as a peacekeeper in Mozambique in 1993 to 1994. He's a graduate from Defense Services Staff College, Wellington, and also Command and General Staff College, Dhaka, Bangladesh. He won the General Osmani Trophy for the best dissertation on the course. He has an MSc in Defense and Strategic Studies from Madras University and Masters in Defense Studies from National University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. In addition, the officer has an MPhil and PhD from Osmania University, Hyderabad. He has experience of fighting terrorism in Punjab and Jammu Kashmir. He was awarded the Sena Medal and Army Chief Commendation Card for gallantry during counter-terrorist operations in South Kashmir. The officer has widely traveled in Africa, Europe, and US. In addition, he has also traveled to Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. He is an alumnus of the NESA Center, Washington, DC, a prestigious US think tank on strategic affairs. He has been often invited to speak at many military and civil establishments on leadership and motivation. He commanded One Guards, an independent armored brigade. He has been directing staff instructor at Staff College, Wellington. He has also served in the prestigious strategic planning group in the Perspective Planning Directorate in Army headquarters. He was specially chosen to be the first general officer commanding GOC of an important administrative headquarters in Ladakh before superannuating in September 20. He was chief of staff of a corps in the desert sector. He has been an active sports enthusiast even at this age. He has been regularly trekking in the mountains of Ladakh. Recently, he has started cycling as a new passion and completed 6,000 kilometers in a short span of time. He is the CEO of Save the Himalayas Foundation, an NGO dedicated to preserving the fragile ecology of the Himalayan region. He also runs a popular channel on YouTube, shaping the young citizens of our country and giving his views on strategic affairs and contemporary issues. We are very thrilled, sir, to have a high-ranking general in our midst and speaking to us in the forum today. Thank you so much for being with us today, General. Now, before I hand over the floor to our moderator, as per our tradition at Telangana Jana Vedika, I would like to read the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Now, I would like to hand over the room to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction of the subject and also about the general. I now request the general to kindly speak. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. James, Mr. Rao. Wonderful. In fact, your introduction of the topic was really amazing. Really, it opened my eyes on many aspects, which we, when we are in uniform, we don't realize. We couldn't have started on a better note. And as I said in the beginning, before we started this, I'm used to speaking to school students, college students, universities, NCC cadets, and but today, I'm little, overwhelmed that my own guide, who guided me in my MPhil and my PhD, and I couldn't have been a PhD doctor if it was not from the efforts of Dr. Channa Baswai. So there is my association with Hyderabad, my association with Osmania University. This is really a life-changing experience that I had interacting with him for more than a decade. It was in 2008 when I was doing the higher command course with the College of Air Warfare that I got in touch with him as my guide and with Osmania University. Then I realized what Andhra is all about, what Hyderabad is all about. And then after MPhil, we remained in touch throughout, got admission for PhD, and then continued. And many times I visited the faculty in the university. And each time I came back wiser. Each time I came back, learned many things from people of his stature and the entire the faculty that I was able to. So for me, it's indeed a rare honor to be able to speak to you. And the subject I don't think anyone in India will speak on this. Not today, not even yesterday. We have always avoided this particular subject. But for me, it is very close to my heart, very, very close to my heart, because my schooling from Rashtriya Military School, Bangalore, I'm a third generation Fauji, grown up in rural India, and then got commissioned to a unit which is all India, all class. You know, I belong to Brigade of the Guards, the regiment raised by Field Marshal Karyappa on independence. You know, he had this vision that we need a regiment where people from across the country can join. So while bulk of our fighting forces, the infantry, the armored corps, the cavalry, and the artillery is still divided on caste and religion basis, my regiment and my unit is all India, all class. So furthermore, for a person like me, it reinforced my values. Then throughout my service, where I served in combat zone, I saw a lot of action in my life. I consider myself fortunate that I have been able to repay the debt of Mother India, that uniform I wore for so many years. So very early, I was on line of control in Kashmir for almost 3 years as a young officer. I saw that line. I've been there a number of times, and I see the futility of war. 75 years we are sitting on that line and divided on religious grounds. Then I had a very close association with the Punjab insurgency. In fact, when I was in college, I saw the start of this insurgency in 1981-82. And then I didn't know I will come back to this when it was full-blown insurgency. So I operated in the worst part of Punjab during that phase. And I don't forget that. I don't allow people to forget that. Whenever I get a chance, I speak of Punjab, because we need to go back to these lessons. Again, an issue started with religious hardline, we know how it started and how it went away, but thank God we were able to solve that issue. And then when I was on line of control in Kashmir, I could sense the start of this Kashmir insurgency. I could sense it. I could just sense it. This is something is going to happen. I could visualize this. And then 89, 90, we saw how Kashmir was burning. And somehow we are always caught napping as a nation. Always. It's a historical truth. We are never proactive. We don't think ahead. This is part of Indian trait. I don't know. You all are intellectuals. You will be able to put a finger on it why it is like this. So we got a surprise when so much of weapons had already come into Kashmir and Kashmir was burning. It's to our credit that we have a great army and the leadership of the nation rose to the occasion, and we were able to break the backbone of the insurgency and bring it to a state where you see today. But 3 decades down the line, I don't see this thing going away anywhere. So on Kashmir, I will take questions whenever, because that is an issue very close to my heart. I've served there. Then I've, and now also I monitor, I somehow see the development. But before this, I want to take you back to an event, in Indian Army is not a very, otherwise a glorious history of Indian Army, 1984. When after the assassination, after the attack on Golden Temple, Operation Blue Star. Again, in the army, we don't talk about it at all. And many years later, we were told to even remove it from your history. Don't even show those pictures and don't even talk of, entering into Golden Temple. And also it has been now buried totally. But I've seen what happened to some of the Sikh units, what happened in the Sikh Regimental Center in Ramgarh in Bihar, where troops of the Sikh regiment are trained. Their own commanding officer was, the brigadier was killed in cold blood by recruits, who had not even become soldiers. And then we had units of Sikh units, predominant units from Pune, from central India, moving in vehicles towards Golden Temple. So, but again, we were able, that time media was not so live, and again, leadership of the nation at that time and the military, we were able to control it. But I saw the simmering tension which continued for a few years in the army itself. When you met a Sikh officer or a Sikh soldier, the body language gave it away, But we think that is past. Now I see another trend. I see a trend of of internet, of social media, how damaging it can be. In fact, one of the first articles I wrote in the print on my retirement was my fear of right-wing ideology creeping into the armed forces. And that was a very bold thing. Many people told me, you're just retired, you should be looking at some appointment with the government, you should not do this, you have been in uniform. I said, I held these views when I was in uniform. It's not that, but today I can write. That is the only privilege I've got. But I had the same views when I was in the uniform also. And very often I spoke on these issues with soldiers, with officers, with senior leadership also. I tried my best to keep raising this issue of brazen, hate campaign that takes place. And today it has become really almost out of control. It's a devil which is out there, and somehow nobody seems to have a hang on it. Why to control? And people probably don't want to control. That is another feeling sometimes I get. So what will happen to a nation where the last resort is the army? And it has stood. I've seen I've seen Hindu-Muslim riots. I've seen violence of this level as a young officer in Meerut in 1987. I can never forget the stench of human flesh burning. And that experience has remained with me. What religion can do. Then Punjab, then Kashmir. So somewhere it kept reinforcing this thing in me that, and good you read out the preamble. When we go back to preamble, we go back to thought process of the founders of this nation. Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Patel, Rajendra Prasad, Radhakrishnan, n number of them, you can keep naming them. Why were they talking of this? And because probably they were visionary in many ways. But today it is fashion to condemn them, fashion to put them into, distort their entire thing. But that is a topic we can discuss sometime later. Now, with that as a small prelude, I will come to the role of religion in the army. To me, it appears that the role of religion in the army is quite a British construct. I feel so. I may be wrong. It appears this was introduced by the British in the Indian Army, and this caste-based or religion-based units, to some extent, were again the British wanted it. British reformed the army many times. You'll be surprised. You'll be really surprised how the British, which controlled the peninsular India, which came as traders, which had their godowns in Tiruchirappalli and all along the eastern coast initially. Then some of them came on the western coast, Goa and this area. A predominantly southern army, Sepoy army of southern India. How did it become an army dominated by North India? My own unit, which I joined, oldest unit, First Guards, which I commanded, was raised as the Coastal Sepoys, the 9th Battalion of Coastal Sepoys in 1762. So bulk of our army owes our, foundation to Coastal Sepoys, basically from, the region where most of you belong. So how did it convert? Because with each lesson, especially 1857, and then First World War, the British kept reforming the army. And many of the units from pure South Indian or this thing based were moved on to become, so this became the catchment area. And this area really benefited. There's an amazing book by Wilkinson on nation and the army. It's a must-read book. Nobody else has, given out the history of Indian army, the manner he has researched. Why the catchment area became the present Punjab, whether it went to Pakistan in 47, but our side also, and how this entire area has benefited because of huge recruitment in the armed forces in the First World War and then in Second World War. While many communities and religions were left out because based on perceived British loyalty. And this theory of martial caste is also a British construct. I just don't believe in this. A soldier is a soldier. He could belong to any race, any religion, any region. I've seen in combat. So I just don't believe that a person, a Jat or a Rajput or a Sikh or a Dogra or a Maratha or a Garhwali or a Gurkha will fight well. No. Any soldier, if he has something in him, will fight well. So this is another theory. All my life I have been telling people I don't believe in this, but somehow people have believed in this. So in spite of taking a beating in 1984, when we realized that this caste-based units may create a problem for future in India, we didn't learn any lessons. Small reforms were tried, very basic reforms were tried, but within 10 years we went back. Everything was like a spring. We stretched it and we went back to where we were before 84. So we still have bulk of our fighting arms based on caste and religion and creed, to which to me in modern India we need to take a relook. So it's a British construct. And 1857, when Mangal Pandey and other people rebelled, so in one stroke the British removed all Brahmin units in one stroke. And this notion has been built into our minds that Brahmins can't fight, or people from other communities can't fight. And this has come, this is again a tragedy of Indian system, the caste system, which has actually ruined our, we became slaves so many times because of this caste system. You'll be surprised, there is a Sikh Light Infantry Regiment, a great regiment of Indian Army. It consists of scheduled caste Sikhs, whereas the Sikh regiment is of the Jat Sikhs, who are the high caste Sikhs. And this regiment was raised by the British to take on the rebellion of 1857, the Sikh Light Regiment, because the British understood that the Shudras and people who are otherwise just doing menial job, they are very rough and tough. But in our history, we were being fed this nonsense of this is Kshatriya caste, and Kshatriya were not interested in fighting. They were happy if they could get their the liquor and afim and women and all, and they were our history. None of our kings actually fought, and I blame a lot of people on the western sector, whether you count them in Punjab or Rajputs or Rajasthan or Haryana and all, many of these places. So it was done in bits and pieces, and people who are rough and tough are never given weapons to fight. So this is another dichotomy. But in modern India, what I see, this is started by British, and British believed in that we must have religious teachings and this institution of a religious teacher. So we have a religious teacher who is of the rank of a junior commissioned officer direct. Otherwise, you can't become a junior commissioned officer in the Indian Army or Air Force or Navy. Only a religious teacher can become. It's a huge this thing. So we have religious teachers depending on if the bulk of the troops are Hindu, you will have Panditji. If it's a mix, you will have a Granthi, a Sikh preacher. You will have we have Christian fathers also. We have monks also, a small number in Ladakh Scouts units. And we also have Maulvis, wherever troops are, though we have no Muslim unit as such, but we do have Muslim soldiers in many of the fighting units in the companies and squadrons. We do have pure Muslim companies and squadrons also in fighting force. There you will have a Maulvi, you will have a mosque also. So that is one part. And then after 84, that time leadership and people realized that don't pay too much emphasis on religion. So we started this concept of Sarv Dharam Sthal. So we put all gods in one room. Otherwise, you go to a unit, you'll have a mandir, you'll have a gurdwara, you'll have a mosque, you'll have a church, or you'll have a gompa, depending on the composition of troops. 120 men is what you require to have a religious teacher, 120 post is 10. So you'll have 1, 2, sometimes 2 religious teachers in a unit. But now we are following Sarva Dharam Sthal, where all gods are in one room. So you go and you pray there. So you may have 10 minutes, somebody speaking of Gita, and next 10 minutes, somebody may be speaking on Gurbani, or somebody may be speaking from Quran. And we have this tradition of celebrating, all festivals and this. These are all great things. But we don't really discuss a religion in the manner that it should be discussed. So this I feel, after 84, these reforms, we didn't do well enough. I wish that was a great opportunity we had of mixing. And I am one of those who believes strongly that fighting forces, slowly we need to totally mix them. Imagine today in the IT sector or in other walks of life, you will see people from Karnataka working in Haryana, boys from Haryana working in Northeast, people from Northeast working in Kerala. So we have so much of mix today. In fact, our music, our cuisine, our movies, Hindi language has been taken by our movies across the country. So today we are speaking in either Hindi or English across the country. Sab Hindi samajhte or sab English samajhte. And there is good mixing of young generation. Why not in the forces? And why only in the army? Navy is totally all India, all class. There is no reservation on caste. The Air Force is the same. The fighter aircraft, we don't know who the pilot is, who is the technician is, who is the guy who's filling fuel in the aircraft. Same is in our paramilitary forces, the BSF, the CRPF, the ITBP. They are doing tremendous job, but they're all mixed. And probably they have learned lessons from the army, and it's absolutely mixed at the bottommost, section and platoon level where soldiers come in. Because soldiers come with a lot of baggage, from our homes, our countryside, our semi-urban areas, where we have been built, our generation to generation, this baggage has been given to us of some kind of a hate, some kind of trauma of partition, some imagined perception of the Mughal. I am amazed. Mughals never went back. The British who went back from here and looted India, literally the first word which came into English discourse was loot. First word which came into English discourse is loot. And loot is an Indian word which means plunder. But we don't hate them. I don't know why. Who actually made us hollow. But we hate the Mughals who created such amazing land reforms, buildings, roads, highways, and they're great rulers and they never fought for religion. That is also a surprising part. In the Mughal armies, we had Naga Sadhu regiments of pure Hindu units fighting. Rajputs fighting with the Mughals against Rajputs. We had in Tipu Sultan's army, we had Hindu generals and Hindu soldiers fighting. And same thing with Shivaji. Shivaji was not fighting for any Maratha, he was a great soldier, scholar, warrior. He had Muslims fighting for him. And I've seen British, when they came in, many came in as mercenaries and they would switch sides. Whoever was able to pay them more with their horses and their guns, they were prepared to go anywhere. So with that kind of a historical backdrop and a kind of preamble you've read, and a nation we wish to become, or a nation which we were thought to become, then we have to ponder over what should be the role of religion in the army, especially in the army. More and more now with internet, with the social media coming in, especially WhatsApp and Facebook, there are studies. There's a study by IIT Kanpur. It's a damaging study of, they've analyzed 5 lakh WhatsApp groups, and they've analyzed 70% or 62% WhatsApp forwards are full of Islamophobia. Facebook papers, I've conducted study on that and given many talks on Facebook papers, where in the West Bengal election, purposely hateful posts were allowed to proliferate. Millions of posts were allowed to proliferate, which were targeting a particular community. IT cells are so active, which want to, they have their own agenda. So in this kind of a thing today, I feel our soldier is very vulnerable. Our soldiers our men are very vulnerable. If he comes when he's on leave, or everybody has a smartphone, And when I am in those groups, when I see I'm part of some soldier groups, or I interact with soldiers, or I meet them, I see they have changed. They are no longer what I used to think them to be. Some of them are, they read that and they started believing in this. They started believing ki, sir, why are you celebrating Christmas? Ye hamara tyohar nahi hai. I told them, yaar, ye world ka sabse bada tyohar hai. And we always celebrated this festival. We've enjoyed festivals because they are festivals. We never considered Eid, yaar, ye Muslims ka festival hai, Christians ka festival hai, ye Hindu festival hai, ye South India ka festival. So, and that is the beauty of this country, you know, that is the beauty of our nation. Unity in diversity, the ability to mix up and learn from each other. And that is what most of us have grown up in schools and early college and in jobs. You know. But today, this is a big worry. How will this pan out in next conflict? If we don't know where the problem will come. Will there be a problem in UP? Will there be a problem in Andhra? Problem in Maharashtra? How will the Mahar soldiers, fight? Because you are aware of the battle where Peshwas were defeated by the Mahars, and this regiment was created by Dr. Ambedkar. So will WhatsApp messaging and Facebook fight between communities? It can happen. It can happen. We are sitting on dry powder at many places in the country. So if these troops get deployed, which side will they be? Though the leadership, I still feel, the way we train our officers in NDA, IMA, and all, we are still a very strong force, and we still believe very, very strongly in secular pluralistic culture of India. But when things will go out of hand, you don't know. There are areas in India, districts in India, where the population of a certain religion may be more. If our soldiers get deployed, how will they behave? Will people still trust us? Ki nahi yaar, ye fauj aa gayi hai. I've seen Meerut 1987 Hindu-Muslim riots. I've seen what the police, we are aware of the role of the police. That is a sad part, that we have not been able to reform our police forces. Really very sad part. So which side you are going, you are aware, you read more than me, how the police behaves in the kind of hate speeches that are taking place, a kind of, outright, discourse that is taking place in the country today. I speak about it a lot. On my YouTube, you'll find a lot of videos. In fact, yesterday, as a 1st January, my resolution, a 1-minute video, if you get a chance, please see it and share with. I've said, can we resolve not to forward any anti-religion, caste or creed post? Let's not forward. Let's just delete. And let's call out these people in our community, in our homes, who have a fascination for this, to forward these kind of things. And then I see another discourse which is, not related to religion, but to our ideology, is suddenly the founders of India, founders of, our country are being lampooned openly in social media. And this is caught on. I'm amazed which school or college, they have gone to. So this is another fear, which if it allowed to propagate is very dangerous, because soldiers come from the same society, it's the same society which is sending soldiers and officers. So we can't be having an army in an island of excellence, an island of secularism, and expect them to perform like that, because 84 is not too far behind. So anywhere, any issues comes up in India, and where soldiers of particular religion or this thing, it can backfire. So I would like to say that then I can take some questions, that this is a very important subject. Good you discuss the subject of religion and the army. As of now, we are in very safe hands, and I still believe in the, in the leadership and the way we are training people. And I'm sure in future to come, we need to get out of this caste-based. I don't believe that just because you belong to a particular community, you'll fight well. In Rashtriya Rifles, where I serve, RR is mixed. I have seen soldiers from such far-flung areas, such communities. I had a Gujarati soldier in my small team. Otherwise, we say, Gujarat, oh, they don't send. It's not like that. I have had people from Bihar. I have had South Indian soldiers with me. And amazing bravery. Amazing. So this is anyone can be brave on a given time, an opportunity. We don't have to have a community tag or a religious tag attached to courage or bravery or thinking ki, this will do. So sometimes we play those narratives in 71 war or 65. This unit did that. Okay, that was, units will perform on leadership. Whether it's a Jat, Rajput or Sikh unit, it is all up to leadership. And leader need not be from this community. Still they perform. In 65, The most famous battle we fought in 65 was the Battle of Dograi. It was Colonel Haid, an Anglo-Indian lieutenant colonel who was CEO of a Jat unit, pure Jat unit, who led these people to almost your outskirts of Lahore. Another battle in 65 in Punch area by a Sikh unit, great battle. We won a post. The CEO was a Punjabi, Lieutenant Colonel Raj Khanna. He was not a Sikh, but he led Sikh soldiers. So soldiers, I believe, any army will perform based on the quality of the leadership, the officers who lead, and not individual, this thing. So I still believe we are a very strong nation, and this phase will pass off. This is a passing phase. I still believe, being an optimist, and the army also will stand. Have no doubt, army will never let down this nation. But this issue is an important issue for us to talk of and maybe take corrective steps as we move along. Thank you, Jai Hind. I can take few questions now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful discussion. You had, in fact, given us, and you have really exposed the leadership of this country, how they are playing with the psyche of the army and the psyche of the people also. So it was really a wonderful thing. I would like to ask Sri Ashok Mariadas. He is a friend of mine, and is a. Please, Ashok ji, आप बात कर सकते हैं.
Good evening, General Ram Rao Garu, James, and other friends. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, wonderful introduction before that. And Major Saab, I think you have, hats off to you. You have really, I must appreciate the candor, and I must appreciate the frankness with which you have nailed this problem. I'm not sure if these are questions, but these seem like concerns, and that come from a mutual sharing that I would like to express. One, separation of state and church, and there is a lot of problem here. Post First War of Independence, I can see the mischief among the British to actually name our regiments based on caste. So there is a devious plan. And if we read the book Jinnah by the Yashwant Singh ji, interestingly, who belonged to the right-wing camp at that time, but faced a lot of flack, he has very well documented the correspondence between our Governor Generals and the Majesty, Her Majesty, and very clearly gives out this aspect that there was a collusion here, and there was a deviant plan to keep us divided, and that plan, when it kind of finds its allies in India, who also believe in a society based on segregation. And this is racial segregation. There's no point kidding ourselves and saying race is different from caste. It's just a technical difference. So this is also a way to keep this.
Ashokji, you have muted yourself. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I don't know how that happened. Was I on mute throughout?
No.
Only last.
Acha. So that alliance is between those who have always believed in societies that are based on segregation, and powers like British who wanted to keep us divided. And that confluence brings out the current Indian right-wing politics. So therefore everything that we see is today based on this. And to perpetuate this, there is only one vehicle, and that is politics of hate. So and army is an important institution, and they believe in going into every institution, and they are not going to spare any institution.
Yes.
And unfortunately, army is also a victim of the same thing. Now, how do we work around this? Because we started beautifully in 47 and with all the problems, and probably now we have a set of learning now. And going forward, I agree with you, and I agree with, I mean, I'm not a historian, I definitely understand very little about armed forces. But I do know that these trends such as right-wing politics always come with an expiry date. But the lessons are very critical, and whether it is for us or maybe 5 years, 2 years, I don't know when, but those must be implemented with a lot of rigor. And what do you recommend at that point that we must carry out?
Thank you, Mr. Ashok. Wonderful, question you asked me, and you are yourself very well read. I think for us is just to wait and watch, and at least don't contribute to the hit. Don't contribute to the hit. Still, I believe in the goodness of India is a great civilization. Great civilization. We have been like this for thousands of years. So हमारी हस्ती इतनी मिट नहीं सकती, हमारा कैरेक्टर इतना जल्दी जा नहीं सकता. So I still feel it's a storm. It's a we are in a cesspool for some time, but this will go away. However, it is in our homes where we are educating our children, how, and our own people, how much can we, call these people out. We must continue to call these people out. That is the only way we can. And but I'm sure come sometime later, people are realizing this, how media is being manipulated. Kab tak, lies have an expiry date, so it won't last, very long. Thank you. We had,
Pritisha, you wanted to ask one question? Pritisha is an advocate from Chandrapur, Maharashtra. Preeti.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Hello, ma'am.
सर, मैं आपसे ये जानना चाहती थी कि आपने कई गवर्नमेंट्स जब हमारे इंडिया में तब आपने काम किया है आर्मी के साथ में, तो ये गवर्नमेंट, ये जो प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट है, इनके साथ में और इसके पहले के जो प्रीवियस गवर्नमेंट है, इसके साथ में आर्मी को वर्क करने में, आई मीन इंडिपेंडेंटली वर्क करने में कितना प्रॉब्लम आया है? जैसे हम देखते हैं कि सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक हुआ, उसके बारे में पूछा गया तो ये गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत हल्ला उठाया. वही अगर हम प्रीवियस गवर्नमेंट्स देखें, आई एम नॉट जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट कांग्रेस, एनी गवर्नमेंट, तो जब भी पूछा जाता था तो वो बताते थे कि हमने इस तरह से ये ऑपरेशन को किया है, चाहे फिर वो नक्सलाइट मूवमेंट हो या कोई भी मूवमेंट हो, उसके बारे में जब भी पूछा जाता था तब वो जवाब देते थे. लेकिन प्रेजेंट गवर्नमेंट में बहुत ही डिफरेंटली वर्क होता है. तो आपने ये जो गवर्नमेंट्स का वर्किंग देखा है, इसमें आपको क्या लगता है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली ज्यादा बेटर काम कौन करता है और इंडिपेंडेंटली किस तरह से आर्म फोर्सेस काम कर पाई है इन गवर्नमेंट्स में कंपैरेटिवली, मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ.
थैंक यू प्रीतिशा साहब मैम. ये सवाल ना बहुत पूछते हैं लोग मेरे से, और अभी नहीं, कई पिछले 7-8 साल से सवाल ना बहुत उठता है, खासतौर पे जब आपको कोई इनके जो मिल जाते हैं लोग, वो जरूर अब बताओ, अब मिल गई ना परमिशन, अब तो बहुत हो गया. तो मैं हर एक को एक ही जवाब देता हूँ, यार फौज ने ऐसे ही काम किया, ऐसे ही करते रहेंगे. वी ऑलवेज हैड इंडिपेंडेंस. डिडंट वी हैव इंडिपेंडेंस इन 71 वॉर? डिडंट वी हैव इंडिपेंडेंस इन 65 वॉर? डिडंट वी हैव इंडिपेंडेंस अगेंस्ट पाकिस्तान ऑन लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल? We always had independence. As a young officer, we have gone across and raided Pakistani bunkers if they created a bunker. अगर उन्होंने bunker बनाया है मेरी अपनी यूनिट में, हम young officers कितनी बार गए उसको उड़ाने के लिए बिना किसी से पूछे हुए. तो ये कि यार पहले हाथ बंद थे, अब नहीं है. हाँ देखो, नेशनल सिक्योरिटी पे काम हुआ है और कारगिल के बाद काम हुआ है, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है. के सुब्रमण्यम की जो अध्यक्षता में जो रिपोर्ट बनी थी, कारगिल रिव्यू कमेटी रिपोर्ट, वो एक बहुत इंडिपेंडेंट इंडिया में बेस्ट वर्क है स्ट्रेटजी के ऊपर. और लेकिन उसमें भी आप देखो इंक्रीमेंटल काम हुआ, जो व्हाट ही वांटेड, दो स्ट्रक्चर्स हैव नॉट कम. सीडीएस को बनाने में हमें 20-22 साल लग गए. दिस वाज अ रिक्वायरमेंट दैट टाइम he had recommended, because we have our own issues of institutional issues and turf issues within the forces also. The forces also victim of this kind of a tribal mentality many times, तो वो रहा है. But yeah, many steps this government has taken on procurement of ammunition, on the but also the use of military, whether talking of surgical strikes and all that, I think that was really sad. No political party should use CDS or the military's this thing, use them to propagate their ideology. I think that is sad. But yes, many steps have been taken in national interest, but many things have also gone bad. We don't want to talk of the standoff with China. Why it has happened? Why can't we solve this issue? For 2 years, there's a second winter that soldiers are going to spend in open there. And जिनको पता है ना लद्दाख में, आप लोग गए होगे, वहां समर में अच्छा है, बट विंटर में वहां पे रहना -20 में, -30 में, 35 में is criminal. It is inhuman. But why can't the leadership now talk to them and resolve this issue? 13 rounds of talks have taken place. So, but उसकी कोई जिक्र नहीं करेगा. So while they have done well in many areas, but I feel managing our borders is also very important, and there the diplomacy and political leadership must step up, to take initiatives and take decisions. Militaries will do what the government of the day wants them to do. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sir, I
Yeah.
want to ask one more question. सर, जैसे इंडिया इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमैनिटेरियन लॉ का भी हिस्सा है और इसमें प्रिजनर्स ऑफ वॉर की जो कैटेगरी है, तो जैसे पाकिस्तान के साथ जब हमारा वॉर हुआ था तब हमने ऑलमोस्ट 93,000 पाकिस्तानी जो सोल्जर्स है उन्हें हमने कैप्चर किया था और वो पीओडब्ल्यू के स्टेटस में है, प्रिजनर ऑफ वॉर के स्टेटस में है. तो क्या हम आज भी इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमैनिटेरियन लॉ को उसी तरह से फॉलो करते हैं जैसा हमने अडॉप्ट करते समय या रेटिफाई करते समय किया था? क्या आज भी उसे उतने ही लेटर एंड स्पिरिट में फॉलो किया जाता है?
थैंक यू प्रतीक्षा फॉर दिस क्वेश्चन. देखो 71 ना, मैं थोड़ा आप लोगों का माइंड क्लियर कर दूं. व्हाई डिड पाकिस्तान आर्मी ने क्यों सरेंडर किया था 71? ये ना हमारे डिस्कोर्स में बात कभी नहीं आती. नीदर द बुक्स रिटन बाय आवर पीपल ऑन 71 विक्ट्री टॉक ऑफ दिस. मैं 1 साल बांग्लादेश में रहा हूं. मैं ये सारी बैटलफील्ड मैंने उस तरफ से देखी है, यहाँ से भी देखी. मेरी अपनी यूनिट थी 71 वॉर में वहां पे. और क्या कारण है कि ऑन द वेस्टर्न फ्रंट हमने मतलब कभी भी किसी ने सरेंडर नहीं किया हमारे को? क्यों किसी भी पाकिस्तानी यूनिट ने हमें वेस्टर्न फ्रंट पे क्यों नहीं कभी सरेंडर किया? क्या कारण था? देखिए मैम, जो बांग्लादेश में हुआ ना, मुक्ति बाहिनी जो बांग्लादेश आर्मी के सोल्जर्स थे, हु वर ट्रेन्ड बाय अस, who were deserted Pakistan army and were fighting for independent country, were not allowed to enter Dhaka for 2 days. The reason was Pakistan army would have got lynched. They would have got lynched. इनको जिंदा मार दिया जाता. लोग मार देते बांग्लादेशी लोग, क्योंकि मार्च से लेके जो ऑपरेशन सर्च लाइट और जो इन्होंने कत्लेआम किया ना, जो 2-3 लाख औरतों का रेप हुआ है वहां पे बांग्लादेश के अंदर, जिस तरीके से बांग्लादेशी intellectuals को खात्मा किया गया by Pakistan army. So Pakistan army was boycotted by the people by Bengalis in March 71. So they were psychologically there was a paralysis. And when they were surrounded by all sides, and the Indian army success का बहुत श्रेय मुक्ति बाहिनी को जाता है और लोकल लोगों को जाता है. जब हमने एयर ड्रॉप किया तंगेल में, तो ऑलरेडी लोग ग्राउंड पर थे हमें रिसीव करने के लिए. And they were cheering up the Indian army. So Pakistan army का ये थी सिचुएशन. जब नियाजी को पता लगा कि ये सिचुएशन है, एंड जब उनको पता लगा देश के अंदर क्या माहौल है कि अगर हम बंगालियों के हाथ में चढ़ गए ना तो हमें खत्म कर दिया जाएगा. दैट इज व्हाई दिस डील वाज रीच्ड कि यार हम तुम्हें सरेंडर कर देते हैं. एंड हमने कहा ठीक है, हम आपको प्रिजनर ऑफ वॉर का स्टेटस दे देंगे. ये रियलिटी है लाइफ की. So
this was a part of diplomacy, this 93,000.
Yeah, diplomacy, and they realized there was no help coming from West Pakistan. Now Air Force, we got a air supremacy within 2 days. Navy, we had blockaded the Karachi harbor, we had blockaded the Bay of Bengal. And the West Pakistan, they felt the defense of East lies in the West. तो उन्होंने कहा यार ये तो मरने दो इनको. So वहां से कुछ नहीं आ रहा था. यहाँ लोग, armies only fight if people support you. Otherwise, no army in the world can fight. We have seen US का क्या हाल हुआ. $3-4 ट्रिलियन करके and 3,000-4,000 सोल्जर्स की कुर्बानी देके गए ना अफगानिस्तान से हार के यहाँ से. Because people are not ready. अगर लोग नहीं ना, अब कुछ नहीं कर सकते. कोई हथियार कुछ नहीं कर सकता. So बांग्लादेश में जो सिचुएशन था, पाकिस्तान आर्मी had lost the moral right to defend that country. So they surrendered to us. और इस 93,000 में औरतें भी थी, बच्चे भी थे, उनके फैमिलीज भी थी.
Oh.
ये भी पता नहीं है लोगों को. आई थिंक 79-80,000 सोल्जर्स थे, बाकी उनके सिविलियंस भी थे जो भी पाकिस्तान गवर्नमेंट को रिप्रेजेंट करते थे वहां पे। तो इसलिए हुआ, बट Geneva Convention is taught to us because we have ratified it. It's taught to us in academies, it's taught to us in all promotional exams, and in Kargil also, when we captured Pakistani soldiers or when we found the bodies of Pakistani soldiers, we made a symbolically we showed that when we captured Pakistani soldiers in Kargil, we brought them to Delhi, and after many days Pakistani accepted them. हाँ यार हमारे soldier हमें दे दो वापस. So we do believe as an army of a democratic country, it is onus is on us. I don't think India can have an army which can go berserk. ये देश के लिए भी अच्छी बात नहीं.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pratisha.
Professor Bishnu Chandran Chaudhary, sir, do you want to ask anything? Chaudhary, sir? Yeah, Professor Sudhakar, sir. He has put a lot of things in the chat box.
Thank you very much. Actually, when almost half an hour back, when I was supposed to browse to this program, I was searching for Dr. Yashpal Moore's contribution, which is a lot of information available in the internet. Is an excellent, most responsible son of the soil, turned as a writer, educationalist, and running a YouTube also for the purpose of improvement of the personality development. The whole lot of things I was actually tracing all through in the last 10-15 minutes. So I have a little bit doubts. I think definitely you will be clarifying subsequently on the topic on which you are chosen. But in the meanwhile, I would like to, I have already shared one of your articles recently written in print, that is political ideology has a direct impact on army's leadership, and that's worry. That's what you have been writing.
Yes, I wrote it.
And another 3-4 articles I'm reading. Stop seeing Bangladesh as an East Pakistan. Last 5 years are missed opportunity. Every soldier is a farmer in uniform. Insulting protesters will hurt those at border too. Chopin encounter slow shows a way why army officers need ethnic training for troops in conflict zones. The lesson for raw IB from Kargil to Ladakh, fixed responsibility. And apart from this, particularly I was paying a lot of attention on your present article, which has actually tempted me on this political ideology and its direct impact on army's leadership, wherein, Dr. Saab, you have projected a photograph of the present defense minister receiving Rafale and performing pujas and all that. Okay, it is acceptable. Fortunately, what I think is that the entire country is being strategically divided basing on the religion. It's a fact. But my mind was blowing as to whether, suppose if the same thing, the political narrations are going to also enter into this arena of defense and all that, what would be the future? As you already told that all the religious worshipping places are on one same roof, one stall only. But when, as you wrote, when smartphones are changing the facet of the people, including Jawans, to the highest officials and their families, and the information is percolated from any corner to every corner, and it is all majority of the information that is being passed is being created by a WhatsApp university or IT cell or such a kind of things. Now my simple question, Dr. Saab, is that what would be the impact if such kind of things are going to be continued, the so-called, I don't want to use this lynching and all that, but definitely any common sane man can able to understand as to which particular direction this country is moving. If it happens to be, then what my simple assumption is that, no, apart from the defense service and all that, there are paramilitary services are also there, which are in the control of maybe the state governments, or at times central government may also deploy forces. Now, supposing if the governments or maybe people in power or people can influence others, are invoking these kind of the things, a kind of religious sentiments, then what happens? Because our paramilitary forces are also a combination of many religions. If something goes wrong, I was actually, when you, after reading your article, I saw as to what happened in Golden Temple. When the soldiers were supposed to enter the Golden Temple, they have removed shoes, as I wrote, and taken all kind of respect and care towards religion. That was the situation, and they have faced a consequence also. Majority of the higher officers have died, but is whether such kind of situation is there today, and is going to be there tomorrow in view of the present scenario. This is actually I require a clarification for your last but one paragraph of the article which you wrote. I have shared with my friends. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhakar
Thank you, sir.
from Warangal. I'm
Yes.
amazed you did so much research on me and you took out all the best articles. I wish you had also quoted an article which is very, very popular on the net from
Yes.
Scroll, where I wrote on Rosa. When I kept Rosas as a Hindu officer serving in Kashmir, I read the Quran and kept Rosas to realize कि लोग Muslim लोगों के मन में क्या चल रहा है. That is why I won hearts and minds in Kashmir. Even today I can go back to Kashmir in civil dress and I know nothing will happen to me because इतने लोग प्यार करते हैं मेरे.
Yes, yes.
So that also reaching out to people of other faiths. This is also a very strong trait of mine, interfaith harmony. So wherever I get a chance, I like to speak on interfaith harmony. You know how we really need all religions and all communities. You know. So Doctor, मैं आपको सुधाकर यही बोलूँगा. I still believe in the resilience of our people and still believe in the very, very strong. I think leadership will rise when a bad situation go. I think it's a passing phase. You know, it's a tsunami, controllable. Already people are seeing through it. The best part is we are seeing through WhatsApp University.
Sir, this leadership is controlling people, and this leadership is also going to control the country. Now, how could a common man like me find a dichotomy? So, a single leader in an autocratic democracy can able to turn the people in whatever manner he wanted to because of various considerations and all other universities and all that, the so-called creative universities. Supposing if this kind of things happen also to enter into the most sensitive arena of defense, and definitely I presume, I hope that it should not happen. Supposing if it happened,
I'll just leave it here. Dr. Arun Prakash, Admiral Arun Prakash, one of the finest naval chiefs we have had, finest naval chief, who writes books, who's a, you must read about it. He's written an article 2 days back on this
Arun
issue.
Prakash. Okay.
Admiral Arun Prakash.
Sir.
He's written. So I believe still, and if this was नहीं ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा इंडिया में. Otherwise, West Bengal situation won't be what it is. Kerala, many of you must be knowing, एक सीट नहीं मिली वहाँ पे. Maharashtra, we see a right-wing party observing absolutely secular credentials.
Sir.
You know, so amazing. India is amazing. I'm not a naysayer, so I think we will ride the wave.
Sir, there is one question from Sevak
Sir.
in the chat box. With the current state of border conflict, how should Indian Army paramilitary engage with Pakistan in this asymptotic war? Does this model apply to our potential conflict with China?
See, what I will say with Pakistan is somewhere the more rhetoric we create here, more Zingoism we create in TV studios, our leadership, they keep talking of Pakistan. We are actually helping Pakistan Army. Pakistan Army as an institution, how does Pakistan people come together? They come together on anti-India hatred. So what can we change the discourse? Can we change the discourse for some time? That we don't, at least from our side, let's stop Zingoism. Let's stop this हम क्यों करते हैं पाकिस्तान को target? Because it is suiting some people here to target our own people. Otherwise, Pakistan is 1/4 of our economy. Abject poverty, absolutely in shambles. Why are we competing with them? Why do we even discuss Pakistan in our elections and all that? So, and many years back, like people like me, some senior leaders were also of the view we must engage Pakistan army directly. We must engage them in talks directly, army to army. It will have an amazing effect. So, and armies understand, armies are armies. Let me tell you this. I have operated with Pakistan army officers in UN as well, also in Dhaka. They're just like you and me. They love Indian music. They love our serials. They're all, everybody, they just love our actors and actresses. And unki shadi mein hamare hi gaane bajte hain. So we are already capturing the minds of these people. And our Bollywood is doing an amazing job of it. So why do we create unnecessarily Zingoism from here? So that discourse we need to change, and we need to stop talking of them.
Major, thank you, General. I'm sorry.
No issue.
Yeah, there's Dr. Jeevan Kumar. He's from HRF, the Human Rights Forum. Can I ask him to speak? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wanted to listen to Captain, and then it's very amazing. I mean, his exposure about the brain, I mean, minds of the soldiers who are saving this country, and the hypocrisy of the political parties, and then the way they're being used, I mean, the threats that they might face. He explained it brilliantly. It's amazing. As he said, I have detailedly read Meerut, what happened in Meerut riots, I know, and then what happened in Gujarat, we know, what's happening in Northeast now, we are seeing, but it's really his talk is very elaborate, and then people like us should learn lessons from him, and I have nothing to ask him, but only fear, like most of us, where would we go from here?
Yeah.
What would happen to the brains, and then they're injecting things into brains of the common people, and then what would happen to this country? That fears we have. Thank you, General. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Masudan Reddy. He's also a political science.
Good evening to Telangana Janavedika and everyone who is there. Sir, it was really wonderful talk, sir. We enjoyed a lot. But there are so many complex issues which we are not able to understand as to how a regiment is based on caste system, and you explained wonderfully. But how this present political regime, which believes in such kind of jingoism which you have been talking about, would impact the armed forces, and I hope the civil society, which is being conspired to be divided, would have reflection in the functioning of the army also, I think. So how would you see the entire discourse of the present political regime would be going to affect India strategically?
I think it's already affecting us, this why our relations with China have gone bad. Someday we can discuss, why when, our Prime Minister visited China 7 times.
Yes,
and Xi Jinping has come here so many times. What camaraderie, what bonhomie, what went wrong?
Yes.
And on the other spectrum, you see in November, the trade has crossed $100 billion. We are importing from China. So dushmani kar rahe hain, yahan boycott China kar rahe hain, but trade is booming, literally booming with China. Who are these people who are so much making money out of trade with China? And why are we trading with China? So there are different, narratives that are at play. I'll leave it at that. But for from common man's perspective, I think strategically it won't affect. I still believe in resilience of our armed forces, and I still believe the leadership, people who are on the leadership position in the 3 forces, they are all they will take corrective actions if required, and they will not fall for any zingoistic or this kind of a thing. And finally, when our leadership with armed forces, they take decisions, by and large, I think we have been okay. We have been
Oh,
okay. We have
thank you.
taken interest in national interest. So I believe finally we will take in, all actions as part of what India requires. So I still
Thank you,
believe I'm a positive person.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Masood Reddy.
Thank you,
Sir, one question I would like to ask is, as a former army man, and still you are still very actively participating in all the aspects, do you think there should be a cooling off period for an army officer to join a political system or to join the cabinet? I think you understood whom I am directing it.
Yes, yes.
So
I totally agree with you. No way an army chief can join a political party. Absolutely. He can't join any party. Or anyone who's retired as a 3-star. That means what are you trying to, why don't you come up as an independent if you feel so strongly? And join, no. And in army, it is looked down upon very badly. Let me tell you this. Army is not happy. The rank and file of the army is not happy a former chief goes and joins a party. It's exactly what the judges feel when a chief justice gets a Rajya Sabha seat. You've achieved what else? This greed for post and this greed, somewhere it should stop. Somewhere it needs to stop. I totally know. I have taken a pole position on this. No way a chief or a 3-star. What cooling off? I'm saying he should never join. He or she should never join a political party. You come to politics, but come as an independent. You stand by your, strongly, and let common people project you. There are many leadership positions. You don't have to come to cabinet or to be a member of parliament today. I am doing leadership role with my YouTube channel, my Instagram. I have more than 1 lakh young people who are following. The moment I come live on YouTube, I have 700 to 800 live audience anytime. So am I not changing the mind? I don't have to now piggyback on a political party to become an MLA or MP for peanuts. Peanuts, absolutely. No way. Even IS, IPS, armed forces, no way, because we have been brought up in a different manner. इसका मतलब तुम्हारे मन में कहीं ना कहीं वो कीड़ा था, जो आज वो you have removed uniform, but you have shown your true colors.
thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. But do you think, can the civil society really change the psyche of the people of this country?
Yeah, we can. Civil society is very important, and press is doing it in a big way, especially print media. Print media, amazing reporting. And people are shifting from TV channels to YouTube today.
Correct.
TV channels, there's an article recently, somebody has analyzed people. You see, I am seeing in 6 months that I'm on YouTube, some of the fantastic YouTube channels, the way they have grown. Nobody's switching on to this useless vernacular media, or even English media is all compromised. You saw in farmers' agitation, how these people used to be really kicked out from where they used to go and interview farmers. So already this change is taking place. And people like you and me have to come to the forefront.
Right, sir. And this farmers' agitation, do you think it will have an impact as a national movement like the freedom struggle?
No, I don't think it is only. I think that we need reforms. So look, I feel reforms are required, but the manner in which we do reforms, we need a Narasimha Rao to come. We need a Narasimha Rao to come. We need the beautifully written in this book by Gurcharan Das, India Unbound. I recommend this book to every young Indian. मैंने कहा अगर तुमने किताब नहीं पढ़ी ना तो पता ही नहीं. India was reborn in 1991 by a prime minister who had a minority government, and how quietly the reforms were brought, and how we changed as a nation. So in India, you can't bring reforms by muscle power. We are a different people. We are angry. India खड़ा हो जाएगा कोई ना कोई तख्ती लेके. So we need reforms, but we need incremental. Whether it is uniform civil code, whether it is farmer reforms, but many places you can do, but many places you need, do it in a subtle manner, bringing political party leadership of other parties on board. You can never call anyone anti-national. That's why I wrote on farmer agitation. I was so cut up. I had to write that article, कि यार तुम आज उसको खालिस्तानी कह रहे हो यार, this is shame. That means everybody who agitates is anti-national. ये गलत. Don't do this. I warn them. Don't do this. And look at, now U-turn has taken place now. So I
Yes.
don't think,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
yes, young students, college students, I feel it is changing. A lot of young people who talk to me, I feel they're seeing through this haze. They're seeing through this curtain, a cloud that is being, all around.
Okay.
So I think we should thank
Yeah,
you very
yeah.
much.
Yeah. Anybody having any
We
question?
can have Dr. Channa Baswaya, my
Yeah.
guide, speak because he hasn't given any comments.
Yeah, yeah. I think he should.
I think he should speak. And then, of course, James, I really loved his introduction, the way he spoke about.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
In fact, the first article to read, Yashpal Singh More, I mean, you can't say full name whenever, we are just like friends, though he was, in official sense, he was my student, but we are, friends and been interacting this thing. And when I read his article, Political Ideology, immediately I talked to him that 2 days or second day of his retirement, this article has come. What kind of signals would you like to sort of send? This is going to make a tremors. You need to be ready with those things. That is why I suggested a similar kind of a topic for this. Later on he has written many articles on different things, particularly in China and other things. But that article, as he rightly said in the beginning of this, nobody would like to sort of speak on this topic. And I suggest all of you to sort of read that article, which brings forth the various things, certain things which have not come in this talk, but as Dr. Sudhakar has already read and shared it, please read it and you would come to know. He has been, Yash has been very frank, and in fact, when his PhD Viva was going on, this farmers movement was going on, and he told that his village from Haryana was on this, Delhi border. So PhD Viva, instead of, on his topic nuclear, many, others asked about the farmers' agitation in his place and how it is being organized, etc. I mean, he narrated whole thing that how the villages in Haryana were organized to sort of continuously stay. And as he rightly said, that it is not the act, the way, the manner, without any kind of constitutional norms, without any kind of democratic due diligence, democratic process, the way acts have been brought, those things also counted. And later on, this Facebook and all this kind of a propaganda, what face today they have today, that means that have you succumbed to Khalistanis?
5 minutes.
That way, Major General Dr. Ashmore has been frank, and he has been very objective in his analysis. And I've been reading everything and watching everything. That is the reason why I thought that this is Telangana Janavedika is a good forum to introduce Major General and begin with this particular kind of a topic. I hope
Thank you.
my this little effort to introducing him is fruitful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Janavedika must
Yes.
have felt very happy. We can sort of have him in future also on various strategic aspects, China and various other things. I have enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I sent the draft to you because I was not very sure.
Yeah.
And initially I sent the draft to him before it went for, print. Thank you, sir.
So I just wanted to make a quick comment. Thank you so much, General. It was magnificent. Your talk was
Thank
we well, it was, we really, we were, I mean, fully enthralled listening to you. You have exposed us to issues which we are totally unaware of, because we are studying other areas. This is a totally new area for us. We were completely perplexed to know that the regiments are still are based on caste lines, and that a lot of reforms still need to be brought in, and I think you are the first person I think I'm hearing why people are not angry with the British. So why, I don't know why nobody talks about it, and why there's so many people have written about, you know, what they have done to the economy and so on and so forth. And so we have been really enjoyed your talk, sir, and beyond that, you've given us much relief. We were more relieved to hear where, you know, the stance of the armed forces would lie, and it was really gratifying to hear that. And also many issues you've nailed it right on the head by talking about you know, what WhatsApp has been doing, what the technology has been doing, and it was and how it has been, all these nonsense has been creeping into everyone's mobiles. And I really hope and I want to believe that this is a passing phase, and coming from the senior most person from you, I will hearken to your word on that and believe that this hopefully this will be a passing phase. Sir, I have a very quick question, sir, on, because recently, I think it was a couple of months ago, there was an official in the Pentagon had resigned over artificial intelligence, that China has overtaken US over artificial intelligence. So it was really a major news, and then also a top official resigning. So, and then I believe that I think the next theater of war, maybe whatever, the next decade or 2 decades or 3 decades later, it will all be based AI based. And where are we right now in that context? Are we catching up, and where are we right now? Could you please throw some light on it, sir? Thank you so much.
I think in the subcontinent, we will continue to remain far behind US and other people. And there is no reason to believe that what they are doing is the correct, because they have been repeatedly losing in all theaters of war. So initially, I was also very amazed with their technology, network-centric warfare, and things they showed in Gulf War 1 and 2 and all. But more and more, the way they had to retreat from Iraq and then Afghanistan, you know, technology may not provide all answers for future warfare. We will still, in the subcontinent, still have skirmishes. I don't believe we'll have a conventional war now anymore, because all three of us, both our enemies are nuclear powered. So chances of a full-scale conventional war are receding day by day. But we will have fourth generation warfare, hybrid warfare, trying to undermine each other's economy, trying to undermine people's minds, information warfare, psychological warfare. Those things are going to go. So Army is taking baby steps in this regard. In cyber domain, we are working on artificial intelligence also, but it'll take us a long way to catch up. We are still, you know, we are in 3 phases. There is a small, modern, ultra modern organization. Bulk is still rudimentary, and then there is a third one which is really, you know, still fighting still on the old wars. So it'll take a long time. China is a different ball game. We can discuss some other time. Their progress is astounding. They're 5 times our economy, and they're 5 times ahead of us in the military reforms also. Amazing. They're way ahead. So fighting with them is going to be very foolish. Trying to use this jingoism with them and trying to, you know, push them over. So somewhere we need to find an answer and resolve this border issue. I think this is one issue the country needs to sit up and take note. and resolve issues with China. Give and take, sector by sector, with sincerity, it can be done. And with Pakistan, we will continue to be two third world countries trying to push each other here and there. But that again, we can discuss someday based on what those people think and what is the internal situation in Pakistan and how we can ensure Pakistan continues the way they are. So I think we'll close it here.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, General.
Today, unfortunately, the regular moderator, Dr. Akutota Srinivasulu, was busy in some function. He has just joined. I would ask him to propose a note of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sir,
Please continue.
Sir, thank you. Thank you, sir. Sorry to నేను ఇవాళ జైలు కాలేకపోయినా దయచేసి మన్నించగలరు. ఇవాళ ఈ కార్యక్రమంలో పాల్గొన్నటువంటి కీలక ఉపన్యాసకులు డాక్టర్ యశ్పాల్ వారికి మరియు ఇతర వేదిక సభ్యులందరికీ నా యొక్క ధన్యవాదాలు తెలియజేస్తూ ఈనాటి ఈ కార్యక్రమం